BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm David Currie and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news and views you need on Wednesday the 6th of August as Rangers rattle 3 past Viktoria Plzen in the Champions League qualifiers.
Oh, it's 3-0! Russell Martin punches the air as Jenny Gassama once again converts for Rangers.
2 goals from Gassama helped Rangers seize the advantage over the Czechs. Manager Russell Martin much happier with his side's display last night.
From Saturday to today, they took everything on. It's really difficult trying to learn a lot of detail and apply it with the right intensity and courage all the time, especially after a tough afternoon on Saturday. So I'm really proud of the team.
Rangers kick off another week of European action for Scottish clubs with a resounding win. And there's big news transfer-wise from Easter Road.
In comes the ball, there's a goal! Grant Hanley! And that is a huge goal for Grant Hanley after 3 years out of the national setup.
Coming up, all the latest transfer news.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Well, folks, please welcome our guests today. Michael Grant, the Times Scottish football correspondent, and Rory Loy, former Rangers, Dundee, Falkirk and St Mirren striker. Michael, it's early in the season. Are you podcast fit?
Yeah, this is as good as it's going to get, David.
All right, yeah, no early season rustiness from you, Rory?
Well, certainly hope not, David. We worked together a couple of weeks ago, so...
I know you were in fine form.
I thought you were fantastic.
I was a wee bit ropey, but you managed to cover up for me well. So anyway, well, gentlemen, let's get this podcasting, as they say. First up, victory over Viktoria Plzen for Rangers. Rory, the most encouraging performance under Russell Martin so far, would you say?
Yeah. You can see it kind of knitting together after the 2 Panathinaikos games. I think the feedback was that there was some teething issues and things. I still think there was a couple of issues last night in the last kind of half an hour, 35 minutes. A little bit of complacency creeping in. It could very easily finish 3-1 if Viktoria Plzen had been up too much. They were pretty poor by European standards, I felt. However, I thought Rangers were good, very, very good in the first half especially. However, people will talk about Russell Martin's changes, dropping Tavernier, Raskin, and he got it right, etc. Rangers have performed well in Europe for years now. It's the domestic problems that have been the issue, and that has continued under Russell Martin after game day 1 of the league. So, look, the good European form continues. It's the domestic stuff he needs to get right. So, well done to the team last night, though. Great for Scottish football. They blew them away in the first half, and it was a deserved win in the end. And I don't see anything but Rangers qualifying to the next stage of the competition.
Oh, I was going to say there, Michael, that Rory's morning glass of orange juice was kind of half empty. But he managed to come round to the positivity at the end of that. There, he's talking about this European Jekyll Premiership hide Rangers. Is that perhaps going to be the story of the season?
Well, Rangers will hope not, because they need to change that narrative of turning up consistently in Europe and stumbling too often domestically. But Rory's right that so far that's exactly what's happened over the past week. I mean, last night they had 6 starters who were new to the club over the summer, and yet it was the same old Rangers in the sense that you come off the back of dropping points at Motherwell on the opening day of the season, and then providing a performance of real energy and kind of potency against what should be a higher class of opponent in Europe. I thought the team had a lot more balance about it. It looked more kind of natural and sensible last night. You had strong performers right across the side, I thought, and of course the eye catchers were the 2 wingers, Gassama and Antman. Antman's debut, I thought it would have been easy for him to just kind of almost be quite quiet in the game because he had such upheaval over the previous
48 hours, but instead I thought he was excellent.
Yep, that's the new signing, Oliver. Are we going with Ant-Man or Ant-Man? Ant-Man sounds like a headline writer's dream, Rory, but you have to say, quite the impact.
Yeah, I thought he was brilliant. Really, really good. Gassama's got an eye for a goal on one side, and do you know the one big thing about Ant-Man that that caught the eye? He's willing to run in behind. And look, Rangers have had numerous wingers over the years who, for me, have been full of pace, but they've lacked game intelligence. Rabbi Matondo at times did wonderful things with the ball, scored the odd great goal. But just that understanding of when to run in behind, when to come short, and then having the finesse and the ability to actually take the ball under pressure. And Oliver Ant-Man seems to have that in abundance. Now, it's game one, so we don't get to get too carried away. However, he was really good last night. His runs in behind, his quality of delivery once he did get in behind was really encouraging. And the one thing I would say with regards to my point earlier about the domestic versus European form is Russell Martin's come out and blasted the players, and that's not happened since Steven Gerrard. He could be quite harsh on the players, so that may make a difference, because as much as a lot of people felt that was probably not the best thing to do, I disagree. I think it was about time it was said. But in terms of his signings so far, Gassama and Ant-Man look really, really positive.
It's tough love, Michael, isn't it? He's given a wee bit of tough love, and it seems to have paid off in the short term anyway.
Yeah, I guess it was a bit of a gamble. The dressing room might have gone the other way and said, some of us might be around longer than you, because Rangers plough through managers on a kind of annual basis. But listen, Russell Martin doesn't lack self-confidence. He said what he said on Saturday. He said it repeatedly in a number of different interviews, and he then doubled down on it when he faced the media again on Monday. And again, he was unapologetic after the game last night when he'd obviously got a reaction. So, listen, from the media perspective, it's great, because it's colourful copy, it's opinionated, it's controversial, it gets people talking. But more importantly for him, it did seem to get a reaction. Listen, I don't think you can get. I think Rory said it there. You can't go over the top about it, because Rangers have done this before in previous seasons. And what you now need to see is how they perform against Dundee, and how they perform in the League Cup, and how they perform in the Old Firm game. All of that's coming up quickly. But last night's performance was highly encouraging for Russell Martin.
Can I just go back to something Rory was talking about, dropping players like Tavernier, and afterwards, watching the match last night afterwards, Russell Martin, he said to Jonathan on TV, I've not dropped people, I'm just kind of rotating things. You buy that, Rory?
In some cases, in some players it might be the case, but I think it was also accompanied with dropping players. It's difficult to really put your finger on which one was which, whether Tavernier was rested, dropped, rotated. So it's difficult to actually say. I do believe there would have been one or two. They've had a lot of games recently. I know it's very early in the season, but just for freshness and new signings coming in, there probably was some truth in that. But I also think there was a little bit of, right, we've now got the result. We can protect ourselves a little bit and try and make things good again in terms of the manager's comments, and just kind of paint it as, no, we're freshening things up, rotating it, and kind of not recover the situation, because it was never in a bad situation, but just maybe trying to soften what he said at the weekend. But no, I think it would be a mixture, DC. I think it would be a mixture of resting and freshening up the team, but I think there would be a few in there that would 100% have been dropped by 5:15 on Saturday night after the game, or 7:15 because it was a late kickoff.
Yeah, maybe one or two out of favour of Russell Martin. Not the case about we spoke about Ant-Man on one wing. His chum on the other wing, Michael, is making an incredible impact so early on in his career.
He really is, yeah. I think he was involved in all the goals last night. He immediately looked to have a good understanding with Ant-Man on the other side. Russell Martin talked about it after the game. He said, I want to see kind of winger-to-winger play and winger-to-winger threat from my wide players. Gassama didn't cost an awful lot of money, really, in the grand scheme. What was it, $2.5 million or something like that? And he's made an immediate impact. He was quiet at Motherwell, and yet He's stepped up now. What's he got? 4 goals in the qualifiers already. He looks a really exciting prospect, and I think with the 2 wide men, as I say, given that kind of natural balance, I could see why the Rangers supporters were really, really enthusiastic and got more involved last night, because these two are pretty exciting together.
It was interesting after the match against Panathinaikos, when Rangers went through, Rory and Russell Martin said, now we can attack the Champions League. Was that evidence last night, do you think? A different approach to games?
It was certainly high intensity. It was really, really good to watch. But there's been performances last season where, against much more difficult opponents, that Rangers have went and they've done really well. I think Lyon were the only team that, Bilbao as well in the quarterfinals, but it really blew them away. So I think they went out last night and performed at a really high level. Were really expansive and showed some good stuff. But I'll make no apologies for saying it again. We've seen it time and time again from Rangers. Really, really strong, really, really good performances in Europe. And I think they'll qualify now, no problem at all. And I wouldn't bet against them making it into the Champions League. It's the domestic stuff he needs to get right, because that is where the pressure is going to build very, very quickly if he doesn't.
All right then, Rory's taken us in that direction already. Michael, is this, you're going to like this, checkmate now in terms of this tie?
Yeah, I'd be astonished. I mean, it would be an incredible collapse, really, if they were to not make it from here. I thought they made Viktoria Plzen look pretty ordinary. I mean, this was a team that reached the last 16 in Europa League last season, but I thought Rangers were better than them. There were spells, though. I mean, there were, early on, Viktoria Plzen were having a bit of success attacking Rangers down the right side, especially, and later on, as Martin said, they got a bit sloppy. Rangers, they gave Viktoria Plzen quite a lot of play and a little bit of encouragement, but they didn't get a goal to show for it. I agree. I think Rangers are through in this tie. I think they will face a step up in class in the next round, whether it's Salzburg or Bruges. They played Bruges pre-season. And listen, it's pre-season, it was Rangers' first game, but Bruges looked very good in the first half while they had their full team on. They made a lot of changes. It finished 2 each. So again, we're still where we normally see Rangers, dealing with tests up to a point. Let's see if they get through the playoff. That would be breaking new ground. That would be getting through a glass ceiling if they get through the Champions League playoff. And again, obviously, if they go on a good domestic run, that's different. What we're seeing so far, nothing is yet different.
Gentlemen, I'll give you a couple of minutes, or a couple of seconds actually, to pause for breath while I tell the listeners that the latest episode of Sacked in the Morning with Amy Irons and Craig Levine is live on BBC Sounds now. An interview with former Rangers boss Philippe Clement. You can get a sneak preview of it at the end of this podcast, so keep listening for that. And so, as Michael Grant's grandfather clock ticks beautifully in the background to the latest transfer news, because Hibernian last night signed Scotland defender Grant Hanley. Rory, what do you make of them apples? A big signing for Hibs?
Yeah, good, big, dominant centre-back who'll add competition and experience to the changing room. And I know these things are a bit of a cliche, but I think, this time last year when Hibs had started the season and were struggling a little bit, they could have done with somebody like that then, but to add him when they're in such a good place, that really good 2-1 win away to Dundee after a difficult, long European night, Hibs will want to buck the trend in terms of being able to handle both European qualifiers and league campaign, and they've certainly started well. You've got Kieran Bowie at one end, Grant Hanley at the other, a rejuvenated Rocky Bashiri after last season, Martin Boyle, David Gray is doing a phenomenal job there at Hibs, and they look really, really strong. I think that Hibs and Hearts are going to go, toe to toe this season for third place.
Oh, just third place, Michael, says Rory. Tony Bloom might fancy Hearts to go a wee bit higher.
Not this season, I don't think. A wee bit early for that.
Tony Bloom definitely does aim higher than that. Immediately we spoke to him spoke to him on Monday, and he's not hiding his light under a bushel in terms of what he expects from Hearts this season. David, I thought when you mentioned my grandfather clock and then going on to Grant Hanley, I thought there was going to be some sort of
I'm not that clever.
clumsy link to his age. Hanley's an interesting signing, yeah. He's 33, he'll be 34 later this year. Bags of experience. It'll be interesting because I was looking back this year, he's actually played almost as many minutes for Scotland as he did for Birmingham. You know, he was a kind of bit part player at Birmingham, he was there, but the fact that Steve Clarke has kept playing him and kept giving him 90 minutes for Scotland shows that he still thinks that he's got plenty to offer, you know, and Clarke will be pleased, I think, to see him in the Premier League in Scotland, the Premiership. You know, just in terms of being able to, I would imagine he'll get more minutes at Hibs than he got at Birmingham, but certainly he provides real experience and cover, and he's a pretty calm character, Grant Hanley, isn't he?
So you're seeing him as important then with Scotland's next round of qualifiers coming up? You seeing him as a mainstay of the defence?
Well, I'm not saying I would have him as a mainstay of the defence, but what matters is that Steve Clarke clearly does. You know, I mean, Clarke has always been a big fan of Grant Hanley. He's given him an awful lot of playing time. And as I say, even earlier this season, he played the 90 minutes in March. You know, he played 90 minutes against Iceland, I think. So, you know, come hell or high water, Steve Clarke has turned to Grant Hanley. And I'd be surprised if that changes in these World Cup games that are coming up, at least at the start of the campaign. Unless age has caught up with them or so on. But I don't think Hanley will be a much different or diminished player this season than he's been recently.
At the other end of the experience spectrum, shall we say, Celtic have signed Jamai Simpson-Puzzi on loan from Man City. Rory, just 19-year-old. Celtic have taken people on loan from Man City before with Patrick Roberts, I remember. Where do you see him slotting in to Celtic? Is he just for cover, or is he a starter this year?
Well, quite often when these players come up from England, especially on loan, you would imagine there would be something in place to assure that he gets some form of minutes, of course. That's performance related as well. But more so, if he doesn't play X amount of minutes, he may return to the parent club, simply because the reason for these loans is for players to get experience and exposure at a first team level and at a high level. So, you know, I would expect him to be involved, and I would expect him to get minutes on the pitch simply on that basis. Brendan Rodgers is obviously identified as someone who can add to the squad and make a difference. So, you know, Patrick Roberts did pretty well in his time up here. So we'll wait and see if this another young Man City development player can do the same.
Celtic fairly quiet, Michael. Is that fair to say in the transfer front so far? Are you expecting a flurry of activity?
I don't know about a flurry, but I would expect them to make a couple of eye-catching signings before the window shuts, you know. I think it's 7, is it? 7 players they've brought in. I mean, Kieran Tierney is obviously the kind of senior one of those, the headline act kind of thing, but that doesn't feel like a new transfer because it was trailed January, February time and, you know, pre-season contract and so on. And Nygren has come into the side, hasn't he? I mean, he started at the weekend. I think there's a suggestion that he will be a starter ahead of Arne Engels. The others are, you know, kind of options and squad players that they've brought in so far. Pussy, yeah, I mean, you've got Simpson Puzzi, you've got Scales, you've got Trusty. Carter Vickers is obviously the first choice, but, you know, he does miss games through injuries, so I can see the sense in the cover, or the option, should I say. But I do think they'll bring in a striker, and I do think they possibly will bring in a winger as well. And those might be quite big deals, or relatively speaking in Scottish terms.
Well, you're talking about wingers. Ben Doak back in action for Liverpool, scored for them in a friendly on Monday. Pleased to see him back in action with those qualifiers for Scotland coming up next month.
I think he's been linked with West Ham and Wolves, David, hasn't he? I mean, listen, I think Doak's a really exciting talent for Scotland, and I think he gives the national team something different. I really hope that I just hope that whatever the next phase of his club career is, it's the right one, if you know what I mean. Whether it's staying at Liverpool and getting time, whether it's getting a move and being a consistent starter somewhere else. He's at that age where he still needs to be developing and improving. But yeah, listen, a really exciting prospect for us as a country.
Hi, Rory. He's not played that many times for Scotland, but in the recent matches when he was injured, we kind of missed him.
Well, what he does is he gives you an outlet, and defences, generally speaking, when they're playing against a player with his pace, tend to drop off just ever so slightly because they're worried about a ball in behind. This opens up room and space for other players to go and play. You see it at Hibs quite a lot with Martin Boyle. They're not quite the same when Martin Boyle doesn't play for that reason, in my opinion. And Scotland's the same with Doak. He gives a different element, something completely different. He can also 1v1 absolutely rinse a fullback, no problem at all. We've seen that against the likes of Gvardiol. So he can go inside, he can go outside. He's got so many aspects to his game that he can provide that it does take away from the team quite considerably when you don't have that option. So yeah, he was missed the last time out, so Steve Clarke will be hoping he can stay fit. But when you get somebody that quick, you do often tend to find they pick up wee muscular injuries here or there every so often.
Just finally, Michael, I noticed Edinburgh City docked 15 points yesterday, which they're appealing. That's after a provisional liquidator was appointed to the club. That's going to have an impact on that relegation battle, one would imagine, in League Two.
Yeah, I mean, some people were talking about Edinburgh City as being potential champions of that division. You know, were they third last season? Is that right? So I think it probably knocks them out of all that. But listen, I mean, I think you can recover a 15-point deficit, and it can almost give you a cause, can't it? You know, it becomes a thing that you're chasing down the numbers to get back to zero and then to climb above clubs. But listen, you know, that's putting a kind of rosy tint on it. I mean, it is a hell of a blow for Michael McIndoe and the players in the club. They've been a troubled club, haven't they, financially? Edinburgh City for quite a while. There's been issues and punishments and consequences. But I think you'd have to think this would take them out of contention to win the league. Listen, maybe they can go on a crusade and get into the playoff places, but it's an almighty task ahead of them now.
Yeah, after Hamilton, Dumbarton, Inverness last season, a bit of a trend developing, Rory.
I know, and Kenny McIntyre ran through our predictions on the show on Saturday, and of course I picked Edinburgh City to win League Two. So I hope Michael's right, and it can give them a bit of a cause, a bit of an us versus them type feel. Hamilton suffered the consequences last season. Inverness, who look strong, by the way, this season. So yeah, listen, it's not ideal. I don't think we ever want to see any of our clubs here in Scotland suffer financially and get the ramifications of liquidators, etc. However, that is the reality of it. That is the rules. Inverness seem to have got in a position and a place where they're looking forward now. Hopefully Hamilton and Edinburgh City can do the same moving forward.
Well, folks, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. Remember, we're here with new podcasts of the Scottish Football Podcast, bright, breezy and early every day. We won't always have Michael's grandfather clock, but never mind. So to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Many thanks to our guests today, Michael Grant and Rory Lloyd, but most of all to you for lending us your ears. Take care.
BBC Sounds.
Hi Scottish Football Podcast listeners, Amy Irons here. I am just popping in to let you know about the latest episode of Sacked in the Morning. Joining Craig Levine and I was former Rangers manager Philippe Clement. He reflects on his time at Ibrox, shares his views on Scottish football and even reveals which ex-Celtic boss once babysat his kids. Here's a little sneak peek. How hard was it for you? How did you feel when you lost your job?
It felt really empty. I was also angry that moments because all the journalists knew before me. I get a lot of messages from Scotland, England, Belgium even, before I get a message from the club. So I was not happy with that. But
that's not good. That's not good.
No. I told them also that it was totally disrespectful, that moment. But I felt really empty because, you build something together and you're full in day and night with everything in the club. And I had to do much more than you normally should do as a manager in the months before, when these positions were not filled in. So, you feel alone at that moment. And you need some time to recover.
And if you want to hear more, just search Sacked in the Morning wherever you get your podcasts.